In 1890, the US Army thought it'd be a fun idea to wipe out a lot of Lakota people at Wounded Knee. It was the sad end to a series of terrible events between the US and the Plains Native Americans. But why did it have to go down like that? Well, the Lakota Sioux people were already dealing with a ton of broken promises and shattered dreams thanks to greedy gold rushers who stole their land and murdered their buffalo. They were stuck on government reservations, watching their homes vanish and their culture fade away. And as if that wasn't bad enough, they had to deal with droughts and diseases like measles. And just when they thought it couldn't get any worse, along came the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887, snatching even more of their land and banning their religious practices. Could things get any more miserable for the Lakota? In 1890, the US Army decided to play a game of let's see how many Lakota we can wipe out at Wounded Knee. It's like the tragic finale of years of brutal clashes between the US and Plains Native Americans. But why did it come to this? Well, the Lakota Sioux people were already dealing with a boatload of broken promises and shattered dreams thanks to the greedy gold rushers who snatched up their land after finding gold in the Black Hills. And now the buffalo population got decimated. The Lakota were stuck on government reservations with their homes disappearing and their culture fading away. And as if that wasn't bad enough, they had to deal with droughts and diseases like measles, whooping cough, and the flu all throughout 1890. And just when they thought it couldn't get any worse, along came the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887, snatching even more of their land and clamping down on their religious practices. Could things get any worse for the Lakota? In tough times, something hopeful happened. The Ghost Dance movement. It started in Nevada around 1870 but became popular in 1889 when Paiute prophet Wovoka brought it back. The Lakotas supported the idea, believing that dancing could improve things and bring back their land and ancestors. They even wore white shirts, believing it would keep them safe. Roughly a third of the Lakota people joined in the Ghost Dance, seeing it as a beacon of hope during a tough time. Why did the US troops mobilize against the Ghost Dancers? As the Ghost Dance craze spread, scared white settlers freaked out, thinking it was the start of a big rebellion. Federal agent Daniel F. Royer sent a frantic telegram to the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs saying, "Indians are dancing like crazy in the snow. We need help, and we need it now." It was a real mess on the reservations because the feds thought anyone dancing was gearing up for war. But as one Lakota put it later, "We weren't crazy, just unhappy." The government banned Ghost Dance ceremonies and sent in the big guns, General Nelson Miles and his crew, who famously flopped at the Battle of the Little Bighorn years before. They even went after tribal leaders suspecting of stirring up the Ghost Dance frenzy. Now when the Indian police tried to arrest Chief Sitting Bull at the Standing Rock Reservation on December 15, 1890, things got messy and he ended up dead. With the army after him, Sitting Bull's half-brother, Chief Spotted Elk, also known as Chief Bigfoot, hightailed it out of Standing Rock with a bunch of Lakota, heading over 200 miles to Pine Ridge Reservation on the other side of the state. On December 28th, the U.S. cavalry caught up with Spotted Elk and his crew, mostly elders, women, and kids, near Wounded Knee Creek in southwest South Dakota. They nabbed Spotted Elk, who was too sick with pneumonia to even sit up, and aimed their guns down at the Lakota camp from a hill. As tensions boiled over, picture American soldiers, armed to the teeth, surrounded the Lakota on December 29th. Meanwhile, a brave medicine man kicks off the Ghost Dance, boldly declaring, "Don't worry people, their bullets can't touch us," and tossing dust in the air like it's some kind of magic shield. But wait, while the cavalry looked around, they took away axes and rifles from the Lakota. Then, out of nowhere, bam! A gunshot! Who shot first? No clue, but suddenly it's a Wild West shootout with bullets all around. Spotted Elk, lying helpless, gets shot, and those innocent boys playing leapfrog, they get caught in the crossfire. Women and kids scramble for safety in a nearby ravine in the chaos. And to top it all off, one soldier yells, "Remember Custer," as they go on a rampage, targeting the defenseless Lakota. Could this day get any worse? And more importantly, who's going to stand up for the Lakota in this mess? When the shooting finally ended hours later, bodies lay scattered in the ravine. Some were still breathing, but many had stopped. Some of those who tried to run away were found miles from the scene. It's heartbreaking to know that some were even stripped of their sacred clothing. Around 150 Lakota lost their lives in this tragedy, though some experts believe the number was even higher. Among the casualties were also 25 American soldiers, many of whom were mistakenly shot by their comrades. It's devastating to know that the majority of those who died were women and children. Be the first to know about our upcoming content. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now let's proceed and explore just how brutally the victims of this massacre were treated. Would you believe it? The participants in the massacre received the military's highest honor. The deceased were taken to the nearby church and laid out in rows beneath the Christmas decorations, adding a touch of irony to the tragedy. Later, a burial team arrived, digging a pit and hastily laying the frozen bodies to rest in a mass grave. To make matters worse, as Sprague puts it, some survivors were carted off to Fort Sheridan in Illinois, thrown into prison for being at Wounded Knee. Eventually, they found themselves part of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, which, let's face it, wasn't exactly a flattering portrayal of their culture. But hey, it was better than rotting in a cell, right? When Miles, who wasn't even there, condemned the massacre, the U.S. Army saw fit to award 20 members of the 7th Cavalry with the Medal of Honor, the highest honor for their role in the bloodshed. Looking back, survivor Black Elk lamented in 1931, I can still see the women and children lying scattered along the gulch, a haunting image that never fades. Sadly, this wasn't the last time blood stained the ground near Wounded Knee Creek. In February 1973, activists from the American Indian movement took over the site for 71 days, protesting the government's mistreatment of Native Americans. The standoff ended in tragedy, with the loss of 2 Native American lives. The U.S. Army conveniently shrugged off Lieutenant Edward W. Casey's death by plenty horses just to keep calling Wounded Knee a battle, not a massacre. In Roger D. Silvestro's In the Shadow of Wounded Knee, he digs into this grim episode where 200 to 350 Native people and 49 soldiers met their end, some thanks to friendly fire. Isn't it ironic that Casey, supposedly for Native American rights, defended Cheyennes accused of a crime? The book's title, In the Shadow of Wounded Knee, sounds all grand, but it mostly rehashes well-known stuff like Sitting Bull's assassination and the so-called Battle of Wounded Knee. Then we get into Plenty Horse's trials, which, surprise surprise, were a media circus. People in Sioux Falls even saw it as potential entertainment, and guess what? The Army, led by the illustrious General Nelson Miles, wasn't too keen on convicting Plenty Horses. In 1890, Wounded Knee became the tragic climax of years of conflict between the U.S. and Plains Native Americans. The Lakota endured broken promises, land theft, and diseases, only to face the wrath of U.S. troops. The ghost dance, a symbol of hope, was met with fear and violence. Innocent lives, mostly women and children, were lost in the massacre, while the perpetrators received honors. The aftermath saw survivors treated as prisoners or sideshow curiosities. Even though people criticized it, fairness was hard to find, showing how unfairly Native Americans were treated. Wounded Knee still marks a dark spot in American history, showing how greed and unfairness hurt others. Hey people, are you satisfied with our content? Your feedback is important, so share your thoughts in the comments below.